Good morning. I'll call to order our regular meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee. Today is April 23rd, 2015. I'm Lisa Bender. I chair the committee, and I'm joined by Council Members Reich, Goodman, Andrew Johnson, and Councilmember Warsami. We are a quorum of the committee. We have two items today on discussion. Both are environmental assessment worksheets, and the first is for the Ritz block development at 315 Nicollet Mall. I think for each we'll have a brief staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Bender, and good morning, committee members. The first EAW that's before you this morning is basically determination on the adequacy of the EAW for the Ritz block. The Ritz block is the subject parcel that's outlined in red. It's bounded by Nicollet Mall, 4th, 3rd, and then Marquette Avenue. It is a full block. It is about 2.5 acres in size. It's currently a 254 space surface parking lot. It has downtown zoning, and it's also in the Nicollet Mall overlay and the downtown parking overlay district. The proposed project is proposed to be developed in two separate phases, with the first phase located adjacent to Nicollet Mall, and at completion would provide up to 728 dwelling units, about 12,000 square feet of commercial space, and approximately 900 off-street parking spaces. They did provide also an alternative concept in which they'd be proposing potentially an office component as part of the second phase, with nearly 360,000 square feet of office space instead of the residential units. Each phase would be taken through the city's design and approval process separately, of course. The phase one will be coming probably, provided you determine that there's no EIS necessary, would be coming through the city process relatively quickly. It's anticipated that that would be about 365 residential units, up to 12,000 square feet of commercial space, and then accompanying 430 parking spaces. This is basically a concept of the proposed first phase of the development. As I previously mentioned, they would, at this point in time when they're submitting their EAW, they're proposing to have their development located along Nicollet Mall with a future site adjacent to Marquette. Again, Nicollet Mall, Central Library is located across the street. 3rd, 4th, and Marquette are again the bounding streets for the block. This project was required to go through the environmental assessment worksheet process because of the fact that it has certain thresholds that are exceeded for residential units. And then when you look at the combination of the commercial and the residential components and the fact that it's also a phased development under current or common ownership. There were 4 comments that were received during the 30-day comment period. We do refer these documents out as required by the state. There were, again, 4. One was by the Minnesota Historical Society, SHPO, Met Council, Hennepin County, and then MnDOT. There were no substantive issues that were raised during that comment period. There were a couple of clarifications, just noting the adjacency of the site to the warehouse district, the fact that it's proximate to various properties that are on the National Register of Historic Places, and just asking for consideration of that during the development and review process. Other than that, there were no issues, again, that were identified within those letters that required specific attention. Through the TDMP, really that was the only issue that the city identified as being an issue, is just making sure that we had a TDMP that was consistent with adopted city policies and goals. Basically, the results of that TDMP showed that even with full build out of this site, the traffic operations are expected to perform roughly at the same levels of service they currently do. The main issue that the city did identify, however, was also that we're concerned about the design of the development. Again, this will be something that the Planning Commission and staff will deal with once land use applications are submitted to the city. We're concerned about the fact that there's a large podium of parking adjacent to Nicollet Mall, and we've identified that issue repeatedly with the developer. So just acknowledging that again this morning. Lastly, there was one omission within the document regarding Skyway connections, and just acknowledging that the developer will indeed be providing a way to connect to the Central Library as envisioned as part of the adopted downtown plans for this area. With that, I think I will conclude on this one. This is basically the design that I was mentioning before that we'd like to see a bit refined. This would, again, be facing Nicollet Mall, Central Library here, and 3rd Street down here. So basically showing that big podium of parking adjacent to Nicollet Mall. We'd like to see activity adjacent to Nicollet Mall. And with that, I will close. We believe that the information that's provided within this disclosure document is adequate, and that there's no need to have an EIS on this project.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This site was in my ward for 18 years. So the entire time I've been on the council up until a year ago, it's really great that actually something's happening here. I'm going to move approval of the staff recommendation to not move forward with EIS, I'll also note that there clearly are some design issues that can be dealt with at the Planning Commission. I personally have absolutely no objection to them building as much parking as they want or as little as they want. There's no requirement or minimum or maximum. If they're going to do it, it has to be integrated in a very constructive way in terms of how it looks on Nicollet Mall, with our regulations not to be varied on Nicollet Mall as it pertains to windows, retail, curb cuts, et cetera. But if let them build parking to their heart's content, it's expensive. But if they don't want to build any, that would be okay too, from my point of view.
All right, are there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll just echo the, I look forward to working through the design process along with staff at the Planning Commission. Have they been to COW?
They will be there next Thursday, or this
Okay.
Thursday, next Thursday.
All
Sorry.
right. Well, I look forward to that discussion. I'm sure our planning commissioners will have a lot of feedback about the parking on Nicollet Mall. With that, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay, and that carries. Then we'll move on to item number 2, which is another EAW, this time on the Superior Plating site.
Thank you again. This EAW that is before you, the determination of the need for the EIS, is a superior planing site. This is a little bit different in that this is a Superfund site that has been partially remediated. Obviously, it's been extensively documented that there are a lot of environmental contamination issues on this specific site, which we do address within the EAW. This specific site encompasses the subject parcels 315 First Avenue Northeast, and then several other smaller parcels that basically are addressed at 4th and 5th Street Northeast. This subject parcel, St. Anthony Falls Auto Center, is not currently under option by the developer, but they do anticipate potentially looking to incorporate that as part of the Phase 2 development. The first phase of the development will be constructed on the western side of the site, adjacent to University and First Avenue. Basically, it's a 5.5 acre site in total, again, formerly occupied by Superior Plating. It does anticipated to be proposed in 2 separate phases, up to 750 attached residential units, 75,000 square feet of commercial space, and up to 1,000 parking spaces would be constructed on this site. The first phase of the development, again, on the western side, would include not only low-rise attached residential units, but also a tower up to 20 stories in height, 260 dwelling units, approximately 26,000 square feet of commercial space, and 360 parking spaces in both below grade and at the above grade internally within the site. There were, similarly to the last EAW, the threshold sort of kicked in on this one because of the number of residential units and then the combination of residential, commercial, that particular quotient, as well as connected and phased actions because, again, these properties are under common ownership. There were 4 comments also received on this specific EAW. You'll note that one major omission to this was the MPCA. They did not comment on the EAW during the 30-day comment period, which was kind of odd. So I did contact them to try and solicit some feedback on this, just saying, which I typically don't do as part of an EAW. If you don't comment during the 30-day period, I don't ask for questions and issues to address. But I did call. I did eventually get to the person who had reviewed the document, and they basically said they were comfortable with the material and they would not be issuing any sort of letter, yay or nay, on this particular project. So just wanted to address that off the bat. Additionally, MnDOT, the Met Council, SHPO again, and Hennepin County also commented on this specific EAW. Hennepin County had the most robust comments, and basically they were just asking for some clarifications about where this particular project is in the MPCA process regarding the response action plan for the contamination on this specific site. SHPO did also note that the subject parcel that is not part of the development at this time, but is considered in the EAW, again, they don't own this, that St. Anthony Falls Auto Center, is identified in a SHPO survey. So there is the potential that that could have some historical merit moving forward, but they don't necessarily say that it's eligible. So that's just something that we've noted for the record with the applicant, that they will need to address that issue as they move ahead with development for phase 2. The 3 issues, or the 3 main issues that staff identified and then was further identified through the comment letters on this specific EAW, were obviously regarding environmental issues, traffic-related issues, and then lastly, the historic issue that I just mentioned. Regarding the environmental issue, and this is just going to be a very quick snapshot on what has happened on this site, is there have been over 30 environmental studies that have been conducted. Basically, there's both soil and water contamination on this specific site, both on parcel 1 and parcel 2, as you can actually see in this overhead. They've removed the building that existed on the site and removed much of the soil on the specific contaminated site down to bedrock. There's a small portion that still exists, but in addition to the soil contamination, there's also groundwater contamination with heavy metals and hazardous substances on the specific site due to the electroplating specifically. Again, these efforts and the remediation that's happening on site has been coordinated with the MPCA. They do have approved plans. They also have environmental covenants about how much, what types of uses can be on the site until the site gets to certain levels of contamination. There are groundwater pump and treat systems. They have a current stormwater management plan as well as a leachate control system. So there's a lot going on in this specific site, all under the oversight of the MPCA, also Hennepin County, and the city is also playing a minor role in that. I can answer more questions about that if you're interested, but that's sort of where it's at this point in time. And the remediation efforts will be ongoing as long as it's needed to obviously get that level or the site to a safe level in terms of environmental contamination. Regarding the traffic issues, I believe we've come to work out some of the issues. The original issues that were identified was the fact that they weren't proposing the mode split goals that the city wanted to see on the site regarding transit and singular occupancy vehicle and pedestrian components, and we've alleviated those concerns at this point. We do have an approvable document. Basically, with this development, there is a lot of congestion in the area. There will need to be some geometric and some signal improvements that will need to be made as part of phase 1 and phase 2. As well as some pedestrian improvements too. This site is slated to have a streetcar stop adjacent to it, so that's one consideration, not only for the design of the building, but also for the siting of the building. And this is probably the best rendering I have of what they're proposing to do with the low-rise units. This would be basically looking almost at the intersection of University and First, with the townhomes and the tower located a bit more centrally. All in all, we do believe that the issues that have been identified in the EAW, and again, acknowledging the environmental contamination issue, can all be mitigated not only through our city's land use process, but an ongoing continuation and coordination with the MPCA and Hennepin County. So we are recommending that you determine that an EIS is not necessary this morning. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I did also obviously have the consultants here. They can speak a little bit more in detail about any of the other issues if you'd like.
Are there any questions? Could I ask actually, because we're just starting to see some of these larger residential projects, because I noted the mode split goals are actually still not what I would probably want to see at a site like this with a future streetcar site with 70% auto trips estimated. Are those in ordinance? Do we have, can you refresh me about how we do these TDMP plans and for residential and
Sure.
how these goals get determined?
Sure, Chair Bender. Public Works basically pushes every development project to have that 55, 35, 10 percentage. Initially, with the first two versions of the TDMP, they were not proposing to have levels that high in terms of looking at that mode split. But with the final document that I received later last week, it will be the same as what we've had on the Ritz and other developments. It is something that both Public Works and CPED mandated with the final comments that were sent back on the TDMP.
So the final will be 55.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's helpful. I mean, it has to do a little bit with some of the physical characteristics, but Councilmember Reich and I serve on the TMO, and we've been talking with them about some other ways we might be able to work together to apply some of the good work that's been done on commercial to residential. Maybe even looking at working with Metro Transit to bundle transit passes or providing car sharing. I think there's a lot of ways that these larger residential buildings in very transit and pedestrian rich areas can really design their buildings from the beginning and program them to be, have less traffic impact, less environmental impact. So I appreciate that change that has been made. Are there any other questions or comments? I will move the staff recommendation. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? And that carries. Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.